We are still reading from the Manual for Teachers of A Course in Miracles, and today we are going to be reading section 27, and section 27 is called, What is Death? Death is the central dream from which all illusions stem. Is it not madness to think of life as being born, aging, losing vitality, and dying in the end? We have asked this question before, but now we need to consider it more carefully. It is the one fixed, unchangeable belief of the world that all things in it are born only to die. This is regarded as, quote, the way of nature, unquote, not to be raised to question, but to be accepted as the, quote, natural, unquote, law of life. The cyclical, the changing and unsure, the undependable and the unsteady, waxing and waning in a certain way upon a certain path, all this is taken as the will of God, and no one asks if a benign creator could will this. In this perception of the universe as God created it, it would be impossible to think of him as loving. For who has decreed that all things pass away, ending in dust and disappointment and despair, can but be feared? He holds your little life in his hand, but by a thread, ready to break it off without regret or care, perhaps today. Or if he waits, yet is the ending certain. Who loves such a God knows not of love, because he has denied that life is real. Death has become life's symbol. His world is now a battleground where contradiction reigns and opposites make endless war. Where there is death is peace impossible. Death is the symbol of the fear of God. His love is blotted out in the idea which holds it from awareness like a shield held up to obscure the sun. The grimness of the symbol is enough to show it cannot coexist with God. It holds an image of the Son of God in which he is, quote, laid to rest, unquote, in devastation's arms, where worms wait to greet him and to last a little while by his destruction. Yet the worms as well are doomed to be destroyed as certainly, and so do all things live because of death. Devouring it is nature's, quote, law of life, unquote. God is insane and fear alone is real. The curious belief that there is part of dying things that may go on apart from what will die does not proclaim a loving God nor reestablish any grounds for trust. If death is real for anything, there is no life. Death denies life. But if there is reality in life, death is denied. No compromise in this is possible. There is either a God of fear or one of love. The world attempts 1,000 compromises and will attempt 1,000 more. Not one can be acceptable to God's teachers because not one could be acceptable to God. He did not make death because he did not make fear. Both are equally meaningless to him. The, quote, reality, unquote, of death is firmly rooted in the belief that God's Son is a body. And if God created bodies, death would indeed be real. But God would not be loving. There is no point at which the contrast between the perception of the real world and that of the world of illusions becomes more sharply evident. Death is indeed the death of God if he is love, and now his own creation must stand in fear of him. He is not father, but destroyer. He is not creator, but avenger. Terrible his thoughts and fearful his image. To look on his creations is to die. And the last to be overcome will be death. Of course, without the idea of death, there is no world. All dreams will end with this one. This is salvation's final goal, the end of all illusions. And in death are all illusions born. What can be born of death and still have life? But what is born of God and still can die? The inconsistencies, the compromises and the rituals the world fosters in its vain attempts to cling to death and yet to think love real are mindless magic, ineffectual and meaningless. God is, and in him all created things must be eternal. Do you not see that otherwise he has an opposite and fear would be as real as love? Teacher of God, your one assignment could be stated thus. Accept no compromise in which death plays a part. Do not believe in cruelty, nor let attack conceal the truth from you. What seems to die has but been misperceived and carried to illusion. Now it becomes your task to let the illusion be carried to the truth. Be steadfast but in this, but not deceived by the, quote, reality, unquote, of any changing form. Truth neither moves nor wavers nor sinks down to death and disillusion. And what is the end of death? Nothing but this, the realization that the Son of God is guiltless now and forever. Nothing but this, but do not let yourself forget it is not less than this. The Son of God is guiltless now and forever. And that thought is the way to salvation. That thought is the way to eternal life. Teacher of God, your one assignment could be stated thus. Jesus states it in many ways in the Course, right? He states our assignment. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement, or the sole responsibility for the teacher of God is to accept the atonement for himself. There's no other assignment. Or accept no compromise in which death plays a part. There's no compromise. This Course is very uncompromising. There are only two possibilities. There's love and there's fear. And only one of those possibilities is true. Fear has no existence. Fear is nothing. Fear is a false idea of what we are. Love is our only reality. Understanding that is the way to eternity, eternal life. Death is a symbol that fear is real. Death is the understanding that separation and the fear and separation are real. Life is the understanding that only God is real, only love is real. I think a basic idea of the Course, which Jesus brings in here, is the idea of cruelty. How cruel it would be for God to create a world in which we are born only to suffer and to die. No matter how good it is, no matter how nice it is, we're born into a world in which we eke out a meager existence. We have, little joys and pains and we, we hardly do much that we really want to do, accomplish much that we really want to accomplish. Unfulfillment stalks us at every turn, and then all of a sudden we get old, we get sick, we die. No matter, even if we lived a very long life, isn't that cruel? I mean, and wouldn't that be cruel? Just the idea of how unfair life is and how unfair it is for people to suffer as much as they do. Now, if you think that God created all of this, God created bodies, God created the world, and God created bodies, and God created all this, God would be cruel. That would be insane. Why would God do that? Even if God sent his only Son to save us all, why would God have to do that in the first place if God were God? Why wouldn't God create a world in which that didn't have to happen? People will say, well, it's free will. Okay, God gave us free choice and we screwed it up. It was all our fault. Now I'm not saying there's nothing to this, but the Course has a different way of approaching it. Let's put it that way. The Course has a different approach, which is to say that God would be cruel if death is true. If death in any sense is true, God is cruel. If suffering in any sense is true, God is cruel. And if God is love, and you understand what love is, love has no opposite, then cruelty is impossible. God cannot be cruel. And so we have to at least question how we think about these things. what does Jesus say that here? I think he does. That we've left it now open to question. Whereas I don't remember where he said that now, but death is indeed the death of God, if he is love, and now his own creation must stand in fear of him. He is not father but destroyer. People talk about Shiva, Shiva the destroyer, but Shiva the destroyer is not really the destroyer in this sense. Shiva would be the dissolver of the ego, right? The undoer of the ego. And in that sense, Shiva is like Christ in the Course's terms, the one that helps you to undo the ego. Undoing the ego is the same as undoing death, the idea of death. I want to also mention that Ken Wapnick had a whole thing about non-duality in the Course. Non-duality is not mentioned in the Course, but obviously it seems very clear that the Course is taking us beyond dualities. It says that on, almost on every page. And it's very similar to Hindu philosophy. It's very similar to yogic philosophy, as we find in the Bhagavad Gita, for example. And Krishna is constantly saying in the Bhagavad Gita that the wise, the jnani, the wise person rises above all dualities, is in the center, resides in the center, indifferent to the dualities of life. And becoming established in that state, becoming steadfast in that state, I think he uses the term steadfast here, becoming steadfast in that state of yoga takes you beyond duality, to the non-duality. So Ken Wapnick rephrased this. He said, accept no compromise in which duality plays a part. He didn't say death, but he said duality. It's the same thing. Death and duality are essentially the same. There is no duality. Fear does not exist. Love is all. Nothing else is true. And that's the uncompromising key. The key to the Course is the uncompromising nature of it. Accept no compromise in which death plays a part. Death is not real. Do not think it's real on any level. Do not think that fear is real on any level. And then you're home. You're home free. What else is there to say about this? I think that's maybe good for right now. Maybe we could read one last little part here. Death is the symbol of the fear of God. His love is blotted out in the idea which holds it from awareness like a shield held up to obscure the sun. The grimness of the symbol is enough to show it cannot coexist with God. It holds an image of the Son of God in which he is, quote, laid to rest, unquote, in devastation's arms. That's a great line. It's laid to rest. People, when they die, they're laid to rest. Rest in peace. How can you rest in devastation's arms, though? Where worms wait to greet him and to last a little while by his destruction. Yet the worms as well are doomed to be destroyed as certainly. And so do all things live because of death. Devouring is nature's, quote, law of life, unquote. God is insane and fear alone is real. So to believe in death on any level is insanity. That's where we are. We're all insane. This world is a madhouse. So on that happy note, we'll end here for now. There's no end, really, right? There is no death. What is resurrection? That's the next question, and we're going to get there next time. Thank you so much for listening. Hope this was helpful. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to leave a message, a comment, feedback. Always feel free to like and share, and anything else. For now, we will say adios.